In the town of Warren Valley in the United States, Henry returns home with his wife Emma, who, after a long Halloween night, decides to remove all the scary decorations from their garden, as she has never liked this celebration. While removing the ghosts she had built on the lawn, Emma realizes that she is being watched by a bizarre figure from across the street, but a few seconds later, she discovers that it is just a young man waiting for his ride. Now that she is alone again, the woman continues with her cleaning, but as soon as she approaches the basket in which she was storing her sheets, she is surprised by a creature that jumps out at her. After knocking down its victim, the entity uses its blade to eliminate her and carries her body through the garden, causing everyone in the street to run in desperation. Realizing that his wife hasn't shown up yet, Henry decides to find out what's going on, and as he leaves the house, he looks for his wife, without noticing that her arms are hanging from the branches of the tree. So the man continues to investigate the decorations, and when he removes the sheet from one of the ghosts, he comes across Emma's head outside her body like a horror pumpkin. A few hours earlier, on the same night, a group of girls finish dressing up for the big Halloween party, and noticing that Lori doesn't have a date for the event, Danielle tells her friend that she will help her find a boyfriend for her. Trying to teach the girl how to approach other people, Janet and Maria go to a group of young people and invite them to join them in the celebratory activities. Without thinking twice, the man accepts the invitation, and together they all start to get ready to leave for the party, except for Lori, who says she doesn't intend to go there at the moment, and that she will meet up with the group later. Despite feeling worried about her friend, Danielle tells her that they are going to enjoy the evening, and asks the young woman to be careful, as she will be walking alone in the streets. On the other side of town, Charlie, a mischievous child, walks through the neighborhood while destroying various Halloween decorations. However, when he was about to steal a large quantity of sweets from one of the homes, he ends up being caught by Stephen, who asks the boy to sit with him and eat some of his sweets. During the conversation, Charlie starts to feel extremely nauseous, and after getting everything out, he falls unconscious. Noticing that the young man is passed out, Stephen takes him into his house, but at that moment, a group of kids ring his doorbell, and after hiding Charlie's body, he decides to answer the door. After being presented with various sweets, Macy asks the man to deliver a Halloween pumpkin, as they intend to use it as a donation to a charity. So Stephen gives the decoration to the young woman and then takes Charlie's body to the backyard, where he begins to bury it along with the other victims he has already eliminated. Suddenly, one of the neighbor's dogs starts barking, and to keep the animal quiet, Stephen removes one of Charlie's fingers and throws it in the dog's direction. The problem is that thanks to all the noise, the neighbor goes into his garden, forcing Stephen to hide inside the hole. In doing so, he discovers that one of his victims is still alive, and tries to stop him from moving while being watched by the old man, who, when he realizes that there is nothing dangerous going on, returns home. Now that he's alone again, Stephen uses his shovel to finish off the young man, only to be interrupted by Billy, who asks his father to take him to the Halloween parade that's taking place tonight. However, the man denies the request and reminds the boy that he has a date in a few hours, so he won't be able to take him to the event. As soon as his son leaves the scene, Stephen finally manages to eliminate his victim, and after covering up the large grave in the garden, he walks towards his door. At that moment, the man comes across his neighbor begging for help, but decides to ignore him, causing the old man to be attacked by a creature that was chasing him. Upon entering his house, Stephen takes Billy down to the basement, where they prepare to carve Charlie's head as another one of their Halloween pumpkins. Far from there, Macy and her companions continue walking through the city in search of pumpkins, and the young woman tells them that they should stop by her friend's house before leaving for the final location. While the rest of his friends continue to look for the decorations around the neighborhood, Schrader talks to Rhonda and invites the girl to accompany them in the search for the donations. On the streets, Halloween celebrations are getting busier and busier, with lots of bizarre music and performances. In one of the local alleys, two young people are having fun alone, but suddenly, the girl notices that her body is full of blood, and when she looks at the boy, she realizes that her companion is actually a demonic vampire, and runs away in despair. Despite making it to the street and begging for help, the young woman is ignored by people, who believe she must be under the influence of some substance. With nowhere else to run, the girl ends up being eliminated by the vampire, who abandons her body on the sidewalk, where several other people are sleeping, so no one will suspect that the victim is no longer alive. On the other side of the region, the group of teenagers walk towards the quarry, and halfway there, Rhonda explains to Chip about the origin of Halloween night. The young woman says that many years ago, this date was celebrated between fall and winter, because her ancestors believed that this was the time when supernatural beings would be wandering the earth, and so various rituals and human sacrifices were performed throughout the night. After the conversation, the teenagers arrive at a quarry, and Macy tells them that she brought her friends there so that they could pay homage to the deceased. Sarah reveals that this was the place where several students were eliminated, and the leader decides to tell the story of the school bus that was the target of a bloody accident on Halloween night. Macy explains that 30 years ago, a group of children were returning to their homes as usual, but suddenly the driver decided to take a different route, taking the youngsters out of town. Instead of taking the students home, the man went to an abandoned quarry, and after parking the bus on the edge of the cliff, he started handing out sweets to the students, taking the opportunity to make sure they were completely chained up. At that moment, one of the young people becomes terrified and, after freeing himself from the metal chains, he goes to the driver's seat, where he desperately tries to drive the vehicle away. Realizing that one of his victims has escaped, the man tries to run to him, but ends up being knocked down by the other students, allowing the young man to activate the engine and accelerate the bus, causing everyone to fall off the cliff. Although the driver survived the incident, Macy reveals that the man was never seen again, and that the vehicle is submerged in that lake to this day. Finally, the girl explains that they should leave the pumpkins by the river so that they can serve as an offering to the souls of the young people who perished in the accident. After turning on the power, the teenagers decide to use the elevator to go down to the lake, but Macy tells them that the mechanism can only hold 3 people at a time, and orders Rhonda and Chip to stay there and wait until the cab returns. In the city, Lori keeps trying to find a partner, and after a few minutes of searching, she gives up. While resting, the girl receives a call from Danielle, who reveals that she has arranged a date for her sister and asks her to come to the party. Back at the cliff, Rhonda and Chip continue to wait for the group to return, when suddenly, the pair begin to hear howls all around them, and believe that a werewolf may be circling the area. At that moment, the young people realize that the elevator has finally returned, but as they descend towards the lake, they witness their friends being attacked by some creature, which eliminates the teenagers in a few seconds. Desperate, Chip tries to get the cabin back up to the top, but to no avail, and as they have no other escape route, Rhonda decides to check the place out so that she can find a way out. After a few minutes of walking, the girl comes across the school bus, which is completely wrecked and rusty. In addition, she notices that the Halloween masks that belong to the deceased students are still floating in the river, and decides to go closer so that she can investigate further. Suddenly, Rhonda has her leg grabbed by a bizarre creature that tries to crawl towards her, causing her to run away in desperation. While trying to return to the elevator, the girl comes across Chip's body, which is being devoured by one of the creatures, and as she witnesses the elimination of yet another of her friends, Rhonda is completely terrified. Realizing that she will be the monster's next feast if she remains trapped there, the young woman tries to run to the exit, but during the chase, the survivor ends up losing her glasses, so she can no longer see. With nowhere else to run, Rhonda ends up being surrounded, and while trying to get away from the creatures, she ends up slipping and hitting her head on one of the rocks, knocking her unconscious. Sometime later, the girl finally wakes up, and when she sees the monsters right in front of her, she screams in despair and tries to run away again. However, it was all just a prank by the teenagers, who created various costumes to scare the young woman and chase her around the place. Feeling guilty for what happened to his friend, Schrader goes to the girl and apologizes for everything they did to her. Disgusted by the boy's behavior, Macy tells him that the prank was extremely funny, and leads the rest of the group to the elevator. But while they are collecting their belongings, the young people begin to hear whispers around the place. Shortly afterwards, Schrader and Rhonda heard several screams coming from the direction of the lake, and believing that something bad might have happened, the young man asked his friend to stay where she was and set off in the direction of the group. Upon meeting his friend, Macy orders them to leave the quarry as soon as possible, as he believes they are not alone there. At that moment, the group comes across all the students who were eliminated in the accident, who start walking towards them, causing them to flee in desperation. Because of the chains attached to her costume, Sarah ends up being captured by the creatures, and Schrader says that they won't be able to save her, so they have to keep running. When they reach the elevator, the kids realize that it is locked and beg Rhonda to open the door before they are caught by the monsters. However, the young woman doesn't believe them, and instead of rescuing them, she decides to leave, abandoning the youngsters to be destroyed by the creatures. In the middle of the forest, Lori walks alone towards the party, but at that moment, she begins to hear noises around the road, and believes she may be being stalked. Suddenly, she is attacked by the macabre vampire, who, after immobilizing her, begins to bite her neck, causing the young woman to scream in despair. At the party, Danielle continues to look for Lori, when suddenly, a body falls from one of the trees, and as she gets closer, the woman realizes that it is the red cape her sister was wearing. Even so, she decides to analyze the costume, and when she removes the hood, the girls come face to face with the macabre vampire, who begs for help as he has been completely immobilized. Soon afterwards, Lori finally arrives on the scene and joins her friends while Maria talks to the man. In doing so, the group discovers that the demonic vampire was actually Steven, who was hunting down and eliminating several girls in the area. With that, the girls decide to gather around the campfire and begin their transformations, as the big moment of the night has finally arrived. As Lori prepares to finish Steven off, the girls begin to emerge from their human form, removing all the skin from their bodies. At this point, it is revealed that the young women were actually a group of macabre werewolves, who used all the men attracted to the place as a great feast for Halloween night. Back in the city, a trio of children go to a house in the neighborhood so they can ask for sweets, but as soon as the door opens, they come face to face with a frightening creature and flee in despair. Shortly afterwards, Mr. Krieg appears outside and calls out to his companion, revealing that the creature is none other than his little dog, who is wearing a monstrous costume. Now that he won't have any more children disturbing his rest, the old man goes to watch his television next to his dog, but when he realizes that he won't find anything interesting, he turns it off. Thanks to the silence, Krieg hears a noise coming from his garden, and while looking out of the window, he is surprised by a hooligan, who throws an egg at him. So the old man decides to go to the closet and get his baseball bat so that he can confront the intruder. Outside, he starts rummaging through the garden, and noticing that his dog is chewing on an object in the grass, the old man is confused, and goes to check what the animal has managed to capture. At that moment, Mr. Krieg hears screams in his neighbor's yard and approaches the fence to find out where the sound is coming from. As he does so, the old man comes across Steven, who reveals that he is repairing one of the pipes in his garden and has had to dig a large hole in the ground. Furious at the terrible smell he is experiencing, the old man orders the man to finish the repair as soon as possible, as the stench is getting worse and worse. Soon afterwards, Krieg returned to his house, and while he was locking the door, the dog started barking again, this time looking in the direction of the back door. Concerned for his companion's safety, the man decides to go to the place, but as soon as he opens the door, he is faced with dozens of carved pumpkins that have been scattered all over his yard. Confused, he enters his house again, where he notices that his dog is still looking for possible intruders, and when he hears noises coming from the second floor, he quickly climbs the stairs. Realizing that the situation is getting weirder and weirder, Mr. Krieg decides to get his gun so that he can protect himself in case he is attacked by a criminal. As soon as he sets off towards the second floor, the man calls for his dog, but gets no response, and when he tries to turn on the lights, he is surprised by a child in a costume, who runs right past him, blowing out the bulbs in the room. Soon afterwards, he hears the last breath of the dog, who despite trying to fight off the invader, didn't manage to survive. Press F for the little dog. Wanting to eliminate the threat that has invaded his home, the old man climbs the stairs cautiously, and noticing that the corridor is completely empty, he walks down it, prepared to shoot anything that stands in front of him. When he reaches the last room in his house, he notices someone hiding under the covers, but as soon as he approaches the bed, the old man realizes that it was just a decoy. At that moment, a Halloween pumpkin lights up by itself, revealing several messages that have been written all over the room, ordering Mr. Krieg to give his sweets to the children. At the same time, the demonic entity appears and attacks the old man's legs, and thanks to the wound, he ends up falling to the ground. On the other side of the room, the creature comes out from under the bed, and after revealing the knife hidden in his chocolate, he starts walking towards the elderly man, who becomes desperate. Trying to eliminate the threat, Mr. Krieg takes out his gun and shoots in the direction of the creature, which suddenly disappears. Realizing that he is alone again, the old man tries to flee the place, but it won't be easy, as his leg has been seriously injured by the Halloween demon. As soon as he reaches the stairs, the man ends up overbalancing and falling down the steps, which are littered with sweets and shards of glass, injuring his hands. Despite this, Krieg doesn't give up, and after retrieving his shotgun, he runs towards the door so that he can finally escape the ambush. What he doesn't know is that the entity is getting closer and closer, and while trying to unlock the locks, he is surprised by the creature, which jumps on top of the old man and unleashes several attacks on his head. To remove the demon from his back, Krieg throws his enemy against the wall, stunning him and allowing him to escape the attack. Desperate, the man crawls to his window, and realizing that Steven is about to enter the house, he screams for the man, begging him to help him, but thanks to his hostile behavior, the neighbor decides to ignore him, causing the old man to be attacked by the evil entity once again. Soon afterwards, Krieg is knocked to the ground, and while trying to free himself from the creature's clutches, he ends up tearing off his mask, discovering that the boy has a macabre face, as if he were a Halloween pumpkin. Furious at what his victim has done to his costume, the little monster begins to devour one of the old man's legs, who, taking advantage of the distraction, fires a shot right into the boy's head, throwing his body away. At the end of the fight, the man gets up, and after reloading his gun, he finishes off the creature, shattering its body with his shots. After finally eliminating the invader, Krieg rushes to his phone so that he can call the emergency room and take care of his injuries, but at that moment, the device's wire ends up being destroyed, ending the call. Soon after, the old man is hit by a knife in his foot, and when he looks down, he sees one of the creature's hands, which is still able to move. Terrified, the man kicks the hand, causing it to fall away from him. As if he wasn't already in enough trouble, Krieg realizes that his ammunition has run out, so he no longer has any defense against the monster. At that moment, the zombie hand returns to the boy, who, after being poked for a few seconds, regains consciousness, leaving the man completely frightened. Now that he's alive again, the entity begins to put on his costume, and after picking up his macabre lollipop, he walks slowly towards Krieg, who has nowhere else to run. Despite this, the old man doesn't give up fighting, and picks up his glass bottle to use it as his weapon, but when he tries to attack his enemy, he is easily defeated. Just as he was about to finish off his victim, the pumpkin boy spots a candy dropped on the man's body, and after tasting it, he becomes completely peaceful and decides to spare Krieg's life. Sometime later, 3 girls go to the old man's house, and after being served, they ask for some sweets. In silence, Krieg hands the treats to the girls, who, after complimenting his mummy costume, leave smiling. While observing the neighborhood streets, the man notices the pumpkin boy hiding in the shadows and spying on Emma and Henry, who are putting out all the Halloween lanterns in their home. Realizing that the couple will be the next victims of the macabre entity, Krieg decides to enter the house so that he don't witness what is about to happen. But just then, he hears his doorbell ringing, and decides to answer it one last time. When he opens the door, the old man is faced with all the children on the school bus, who are ready for another night of trick-or-treating. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.